Happy Easter Sunday, Riverbend. He is risen. Really? This has been a tradition in the church for hundreds of years. On Easter Sunday, when someone says, "He is risen," you respond by saying, "He is risen indeed." Okay, so we're going to try this again. Okay, take two. Happy Easter Sunday, Riverbend.
Happy Easter.
He is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Is he? Really? Seriously, it's a serious question. It's a question worth asking. It is a question worth asking because we are children downstream from the Enlightenment. We are raised to be empiricists, and we want proof of things. And so our interrogation of the things that we believe to be true, of the things that we know, even of the unknown, is important. And anything worth believing in is worth interrogating. Because when our skepticism is greater than our curiosity, it produces bigotry. When our skepticism outweighs our curiosity, we become dogmatic and insistent. Everything we know and everything we believe that is worth knowing and worth believing is worth interrogating. So, did he really rise from the dead? Is it true? Now, as an empirical people, we want proof, we want evidence, we want tangible, testable, repeatable evidence. And with a story like the resurrection, it's impossible. It's impossible to prove that the story is true because we don't have the physical evidence. We have the eyewitness testimony. We have the circumstantial evidence, but we don't have the physical evidence. Can you imagine if we did? Can you imagine if Jesus was walking around for 2,000 years? Can you imagine the podcast he'd have with Joe Rogan? There'd be like 2 billion views. Joe Rogan interviewing the 2,000-year-old Jesus of Nazareth. So how's it going there, Jesus, Savior guy? I mean, it would blow our minds, but we don't have that. And so we doubt, we wonder, we say, well, we can't really prove it. But we need to consider the idea that if this was just a fallacy, this was just a conspiracy, this was just an idea that a group of Jewish laborers, fishermen, and people of no standing made up, that they then somehow managed to steal the body. Because the only thing that allowed this story to continue was the enemies of Jesus, the people who were critics of this idea of the resurrection, couldn't produce a corpse. That's all they would have had to do. All they would have had to do is go, oh, he's raised from the dead? No, here he is. Here's his dead body. Forget your following of the resurrected Savior. And not only that, among this ragtag group of early followers, it would have only taken one of them to go, just kidding. No, we hid his body. We threw him in the lake. We fed him to the fishes. It would have just taken one to crack the code. But virtually all of the original disciples of Jesus died for their faith. They were willing to go to their death to say, no, the story is true. But we look around and we go, if he was really raised from the dead, if this is a real thing, then shouldn't the world be better off? The world is such a cluster. I mean, look around. Shouldn't we at least be a better human society? Shouldn't 2,000 years ago this idea that there's more to life than death have transformed the way we treat each other, the way we relate to each other, the way we look at our lives themselves? If this was really true, Shouldn't we be better off? Now, that's a difficult metric to evaluate, because what does that mean? Are we as bad off as we possibly could be? No, I don't think so. But are we as good as we possibly might be? I don't think so either. It's a conviction for those of us, like me, who believe very, very thoroughly and without a doubt that the story of the resurrection of Jesus is true. It's a centerpiece of my life. And it holds me accountable to do better. Because I want to live worthy of that. Because I know the inverse. If the inverse is true, and he was not raised from the dead, that means one thing for sure: death wins. That means death is the most powerful force in the universe. Now, there are some people who are running around and they're saying, I'm never going to die. And they're saying I'm aging at 1/10 of the normal rate, and they have diets and they have pharmacological solutions, and we've raised up people, and there's always people who believe they're going to live to be 200 or 300. Really, you're going to run out of stuff to watch. 200 years old, 300 years old. I mean, the reality is, it exists today, digital immortality. You realize that we are basically on the precipice of being able to talk to our friends who have died, to our loved ones who have died, because you download enough of that person's personality into an AI-driven computer, and they can generate an image of the optimal look of the person, and you could interact with them like it was on a Zoom call. Have you ever thought, wouldn't it be great to talk to my mom after she was gone? Wouldn't it be great to talk to my friend who had died a couple of years ago? You're going to be able to do it, and it will be indistinguishable. But this doesn't mean that death is defeated. The only thing that means that death is defeated is if he was raised from the dead. Because if he was not raised from the dead, death wins. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this idea that we are here to celebrate the notion of life beyond life? Well, it should give us hope. If nothing else, it should give us hope that there's more going on than we understand. It should tell us there's a possibility of a better day. There's a possibility of a new life. Resurrection is possible. There's a possibility, there's proof that there are second chances, there are fresh starts, and there are new beginnings. It's a paradox that life would come from death. But it's the paradox of the resurrection. Jesus knew it was coming. In the final hours that he had with his closest friends, with his closest disciples, he gathered them together for a Passover meal. It was a Thursday evening, and they gathered in an upper room, and the story is recorded for us in 5 chapters of the book of John. John 13 to 17 contains the things that Jesus said to his closest followers in the final hours of his life. And this adds extra weight to it because he knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was going to be betrayed and tortured and crucified and buried and die. He knew this was coming. So the things that he said there in the upper room have extra weight because they were the last things he was going to have a chance to say to his disciples before they would leave, cross the Kidron Valley, hike up the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane. And then men with torches would come and they would arrest him, and Judas would betray him, and he would be tortured, and he would be mocked, and he would be nailed to a cross and executed and dead and buried in a tomb. And through John 13 through 16, Jesus tells them some profound and paradoxical things. But it's in John 17 that Jesus prays for his disciples. And we have a record of what he prayed. And down in verse 20 of John 17, it says that Jesus says, I pray not for these around me alone, not just for these disciples in this room. I pray also for everyone who will believe in me through their testimony, through their message, through their life. He's saying, I'm not just praying for them, he's praying for us. 2,000 years ago, in the upper room, Jesus was mindful of people at Riverbend Church on Easter Sunday, 2,025 years later. And he was praying for us, and he prayed for one thing. He says that they may be one. Father, just as, he says, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they be in us. He prays for this diversity, this unity in diversity, this complex mosaic, relationships between the rich and the poor, the old and the young, the haves and the have-nots, the Republicans and the Democrats, the liberals and the conservatives, the people who are outgoing and the people who are introspective. And he prays for us to be one. And he says, this is how, my prayer is that this is how people will know that you sent me. He goes on to pray, he said, I have given them the glory that you gave me. I have given them the potential. I have given them the possibility. I have given them the same power that you gave me. The power of life over death, the power of resurrection, the power of new beginnings, the power of fresh starts, the power of second chances. I have given that to them so that they may be one as we are one. I in you and you in me. That we might be brought together, that they might be brought together in complete unity. And this is how the world will know that you have sent me, that the story is true, and that you love them just as you love me. Now, theologians for millennium have interpreted this prayer sociologically, communally. It's a prayer for our unity. It's a prayer for us to be unusual in our ability to get along with people who are different than us, people who we disagree with, people who we don't even like. And that corporate unity is part of the prayer, but it's not all of it. He's not just praying for a sociological or a communal unity. He's praying for an internal unity, for a wholeness for us as individuals. At the beginning of the 20th century, perhaps the two most famous psychologists, psychiatrists, and psychoanalysts were Sigmund Freud and a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung. Carl Jung was a collaborator with Freud for many years until they went their separate ways, because Jung developed a theory of human personality that said we are essentially bifurcated. And he said the goal of good psychotherapy, the goal of a healthy, emotional individual is what he called individuation. It is the integration, the way that Jung described it. Jung described it as we have our conscious self and our unconscious self. And our conscious self is that what he called the persona. It's what Freud called the ego. And our persona is that person that we represent others, that we represent ourselves to others as. The person we want to be, the person we think they want us to be, the person who expresses power and fear and all those things outwardly. That conscious persona is only part of us. Jung said there's also an unconscious part of us, and part of that is what he called the shadow. The shadow contains the animus and the anima and the history of how we were raised, the history from our parents, from our mother and our father, from our circumstances, from our failures and our successes. The whole narrative of our life is hidden in the shadows, and our persona goes through and kind of picks and chooses the pieces that it wants to show to others and hides or denies the others. And Jung said you don't become a whole person by throwing away the wounded parts, the broken parts. You become a whole person by embracing them, by accepting them, by understanding them, by appreciating the idea that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. 2,000 years before Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, Jesus was teaching that exact same thing. Because he knows we are men and women of bifurcated souls. He knows that our spirits are schizophrenic, that we are torn in two. And he prays, how does he pray? In verses 21, 22, and 23, he prays that they might be one, as we are one, as the Father and Son are one, with an inseparable unity, that we might be made whole as individuals. It's kind of like the metaphor of the human body. Our body is a whole that is made up of a variety of parts. I mean, can you imagine if your liver said to your heart, all you do is sit there and pump blood. We filter out all the poison, man. We do all the work. You're nothing without us. And then the lungs chime in and they're like, oh no, man, we bring in the oxygen. Without the oxygen, you're toast, baby. We are the most important thing. And then the blood chimes in and says, yeah, but we're the ones that move all that stuff all over. And your body went at war with itself. You know what that's called? That's called cancer. Because it's toxic. Because the diversity of our bodies is meant to work with a celebration. I'm thankful for my heart, and my liver is thankful for my lungs, and my blood is thankful for my kidneys. And I'm thankful for the people who are difficult, and thankful for the people who disagree with me, and thankful for the people, and I celebrate those who aren't like me, because they make me better. You know where you learn this? Parenting 101. You know the most annoying thing about our kids is when they're just like us. You know the best thing about our kids is they teach us things about ourselves we didn't know. And we love them anyway. You see, what Jesus is getting at is he's getting at this idea that we cannot have communal unity unless we have internal spiritual unity. Unless we have wholeness in our spirit, we will never be one as a society. I look around and I see our culture at war with itself. And I see our division. And you know what I see? I see pain. I see hurt people who hurt people. I see people projecting out their dislike of themselves on others. And the solution is not tolerance or acceptance, and the solution is resurrection. I have a friend who says it this way: we cannot be selfless unless we are selfish first. We cannot be agents of healing our community until we are made whole ourselves. I don't know if we are better off now or worse than we might be post-resurrection. I don't know. The evidence is mixed. But I know that the idea that we have the hope of fresh starts and new beginnings, that we have the privilege, we have the possibility, we have the power to live a resurrected life, is something that is worth celebrating. It's also worth interrogating. It's worth asking ourselves, is it true? Because if it's not true, and death wins, then this is all there is. There's no more to it than this. Get while the getting's good. Take what you can while you can. Or maybe there's more. This is what we celebrate today. This unity and diversity, this death from life, the paradox of the resurrection, the hope of fresh starts and new beginnings. This is worth celebrating because he is risen. We went over this. We went through it like 10 minutes ago. Okay, 25 minutes ago. We went over this. Let's do this again. This is worth celebrating because he is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Happy Easter, Riverbend.